Welcome to Tall Poppy, the YouTube channel for inspiring startups and thriving upstarts. And today we are entering into the second half of our first visit with Tiffiany Walker of One More Time, which is a non-profit she started to deal with the grief of her dad passing unexpectedly. So today I want to share with you before we start that Tiffiany shares some very personal details of her journey. And when we first started Tall Poppy in the introduction, you may recall that I mentioned that starting a business is very brave and it is quite a journey of personal discovery as well. And in this, Tiffiany is definitely brave, and she's certainly on a journey of self-discovery, not only in dealing with her dad's grief, but also in how to face issues of domestic violence and having a spouse that has a drug problem. So this is a sacred space for me because she's sharing this, and I'm hoping that you will also respect that and really treasure this vulnerability that she's sharing in her journey here. This is not an intervention for Tiffiany, and it's not an intervention for you if you're going through this situation. Domestic violence is more common than people think, and it crosses all demographics. It doesn't matter what economic, social, religious, cultural status or identification you have. It is complicated. We certainly advise that you collect as many resources as you can, and certainly if any of you witness domestic violence, do call 911 straight away. For those of you who are going through this, I do hope that you find inspiration with Tiffiany. Most of us would use this as an excuse not to start a business or continue it once it raised its head, and she is, despite it and in spite of it, continuing towards her authentic self. So welcome to the second half of our initial visit with Tiffiany Walker of One More Time. And if you hit like and subscribe, we can let you know when we have our next updates.
I had said that I wish that women or men, because you can be abused both ways.
Goes both ways.
That we didn't have a society that doesn't want to hear it or wants you to just hide it or be strong, because it's, as people are finding out what I've been going through, specifically the last year has been pretty awful. But even before that, it was tumultuous is the best word to use. But they would say, I never would have thought this, because I would walk out the door and I'd fix my makeup and I would put on a strong face and be my bubbly, happy self that I have to be for marketing. And even as I have told people that, oh, my husband threatened to kill me, or my husband's in jail, and I would say it with a smile, they would say, you're either the most adaptive person I've ever met, or you're kind of crazy, because I
maybe a bit of both.
Exactly,
maybe a bit
because
of both.
I could just say it with, and it's like, well, now once you say it once, you broke that ice, and it's like, it gets easier and easier. And I blamed myself for a lot of it, and the enabling for sure. I know I did, but I tried to decide which was the lesser evil. Was it better to enable and him come home sometime or eventually, and we would have a few good days, months even, or was it better to end it? And I kept choosing to continue going because we did have children together, and I even now still love him very much, but I don't even know the person that he's become.
So you go through grief for your dad and you start this wonderful organization. What is the coincidence do you see between you enacting something for your dad, for dealing with grief? Did it change you? Did it change your paradigm? Did it change you and him and the dynamics? Was it the catalyst for this?
Probably all of the above. I think that 3 years ago when my dad was still alive and I had that sense of, well, I can always ask my daddy for money, or I can always, I had that fallback and security, that I felt able to deal with the problems in my marriage because I thought, oh, I can always fall back. I also think that my husband knew that I felt that way, and so it kept him a little more in line because, well, Tiff can leave me at any time. Her father's going to help her. So I think that he definitely got worse after my dad died. Because
Or could it be that with Dad helping, it helped? He was enmeshed in that, and you changed and grew up. Maybe, I'm not saying you didn't.
Or grew in general, yes.
Just you became more independent and created something that was obviously so needed and so wanted, and that created a symbolic replacement for your dad. Maybe it's not certainly financial,
right?
But self-esteem.
Definitely, and it definitely did put a wedge between my husband and
Why?
I have no idea.
Did he encourage this at all?
No. He would tell you now, if he was sitting here, that he was supportive, and he never did anything supportive about it. He did go, like to the Willie Nelson concert, but he did the fun stuff. But even like when we were doing the hot air balloon, he refused to go to it, and while I was there was sending me hateful texts. The day he left was the day after our Ruby Red fundraiser, so I literally had...
Did he go to that?
He went to it.
So he got to see how successful it was.
Sat out in the car half the time. So he was technically there, but not involved. I got comments afterwards before people knew that he was gone about, oh, were you guys fighting? He was very unhappy to be there. And so it was financially, emotionally, this huge night for my personal organization that I started, from my heart. And the next day my husband left me without even saying he was leaving. I mean, he snuck out in the middle of the night. So it was just very weird how the two went together.
It's a death of a different kind.
Mm-hmm. I said that actually to my mom about him, that because my mom's had a lot of trouble with my dad passing away. They had been together since she was 14 years old. And so, just the loss and the loss of, that loved person. And she would say things about, well, don't you feel better? That you're... And I said, no, Mom, it's like he died. Because even though he's still alive, the person I hoped he would be, the person I thought he could be, the couple that I wanted to be, there's no chance of that anymore. Whether it's an actual person or my thought of what a person should be, it is gone. That person is gone.
Or the reality of what reality of the reality is tough, and so change. Death is change, and all these tough situations are change. Even good change is change and takes time to adapt. So even if you won the lottery, guys, or if you had a business and it's going really well, you have to adapt and to change, and that can be a little bit stressful.
Well, and I said earlier jokingly about that my biggest fear is admitting failure.
But did you fail?
It feels like it.
So could you reframe it in another way?
I don't know.
How could you reframe it into success?
I have wonderful children and have grown out of it, and it's taught me what I won't accept going forward.
Do you think it could have been a failure if you'd stayed?
Oh yeah, I think it was a failure, no matter what.
So you haven't failed. You've actually created a situation that has enabled you to shine. We're talking about tall poppies, and in my introduction video, it's about poppies grow in the battlefield.
Right.
It's all torn up. It's just hell, right? And we grow up. We grow through it, and leaning into the fear of change. Like sometimes the thing we're most fearful of is the action we need to do.
Right.
Like if we've got to do a yoga class and we don't want to do it, and we'll go off and do Sudoku or something else, or get on the phone, or
Come up with any reason not to.
Or any activity not to. So, that's just a very mild example, but we've all been there. So, this was, in some ways, you created something that was beautiful and had to adapt to. And so, this is a very powerful story, because you are just doing amazing things, and you are starting to grow and bloom. And then that will cover up and change, this torn up field into something that's very, very beautiful. And also poppies, I think, also detoxify the field too, right. So the soil. So do you feel like that you are starting to bloom and are you starting to explore yourself?
Yeah, and difference, and even just the being able to do what I want without asking permission, feeling repercussions, even if they weren't.
Walking on eggshells.
Exactly. It's very nice. Definitely my relationships with my children are much better, even though I feel as though I was a good mom. The added stress, it gives you a much shorter fuse and things like that. And for the most part, I would say that I have no fuse almost, because we just don't have the problems that we were having. My almost 6-year-old, she'll be 6 on Saturday. I think I had shared with you this summer that she was doing some weird stealing and things like that, and she hasn't even really done that. Still fibbing and things because they're kids, like, no, I didn't do that, but not anything that even really matters.
So do you think that they feel like there's a tighter team, that they're safer?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
But
calmer.
I'm sure they're still missing their dad.
Yes and no. Like if he gets brought up, and especially my 4-year-old, she'll get very sad and say, I miss Daddy. And then she'll say she misses Papa, and then she'll say she misses our dog. And it's like she goes down a rabbit hole, and it makes me very sad, because she is only 4, and you just and I'm gonna die, and someday it's gonna hurt when I have babies. I mean, when she gets going, she
really does.
Mm-hmm. She talks about everything.
So maybe you can show her how Mum does it, and it's like, well, what can we do about it?
And that's
so let's make something beautiful out of this.
The babies, it was very funny. She said that this morning. That's why it's fresh in my mind. She was pouting, making this face, and I said, what's the matter? And she's like, someday I'm going to have a baby, and it's going to hurt so bad. And I said, well, you could adopt, and somebody else could have the baby, and then you could just raise it. And she said, no, I want a baby in my tummy. Will you hold my hand? And I said, of course I will hold your hand.
Yeah.
But yeah, she just...
We can go into a whole lot of...
she does those rabbit hole things.
Yeah,
it's just adorable.
It's interesting how children deal with grief.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was killed... obviously unexpectedly, when a semi-trailer jackknifed on top of him when I was 10, just before my 10th birthday. And I actually had chronic grief until basically my daughter was born. I was really living in perpetual grief. And children need to be taken a little bit more seriously in their grief. When I was 11, I did something silly, and instead of having some understanding, the nurse said I needed my bum spanked. It's like, so, how do you think this organization can help children, and if there are children involved, or how do you think this organization of yours helps those that remain?
Well, specifically children, I can use my children and the volunteers that I've had. So my oldest daughter, when I'll talk about what we're doing, Niall will be 17 in March, she'll say, that's sad. And I'll say, do you not want to talk about it? And she's like, well, let's talk about it after you do whatever, like the events. I'll say, oh, this woman has this going on and this, but she wants to do this. And she'll like, oh, that's really sad. But then when we talk about it after, she's like, oh, that's pretty awesome. Or I'll show her the pictures and stuff. So she sees how it is a part of life, and it is sad, but it can be wonderful at the same time. And then Hagen just loves it. He says he's going to work for one more time when he's older.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's really sweet. And both of them have helped, served in things at the Ruby Red. They're just good kids. They always help with volunteer work. But adult children of the people that I have helped, one gentleman said that it was like his mom won the lottery without buying a ticket. And it was so sweet when he said that. And he was so thankful, and he just loved everything about it. And so that's when I say that even if it's not the person directly getting the experience, that it really does help that psychosocial for everybody surrounding them.
Do you think it helps in their grieving that they've had these meaningful experiences with these people that wanted experience, what do you call it, memorable moments?
Mm-hmm.
What do you call it?
Memorable experience.
Memorable experiences. It's very much like, so Peter, Paul and Mary, the singers from the 60s, I think it's Paul in Dallas, has a music foundation for using music for children with terminal cancer, oncology. And music does actually affect the pain, diminish the pain. And these volunteers will go in and write songs with these kids, and then they'll also go and write songs with the siblings and then the parents, and they write songs for each other, and apparently it's absolutely healing.
I bet.
So I see that your memorable experiences, because time is our treasure. Time is where we create value. And for those of us who have, there is a lot of pain when your child doesn't want to spend time with you because, that's their way of punishing you, because they're not making memories with you, right? And that's their way. And so when you do create a situation where someone can spend time with their loved ones doing something, that is incredibly healing. When I asked before if you had observed that it eased regret, do you think it also does that for the survivors?
Yes. I heard a quote on an interview, and I don't remember where or what it was that I was listening to or watching, but the quote has stuck with me, and it's, time is the only non-renewable resource.
Even God can't reverse time.
Yep, there's literally nothing you can do. And it's so true. And like I said, just those little things as a survivor of loss, even with my grandparents, some of those things that my last living grandparent died when I was 17. So she never met any of my children. And like my 6-year-old looks like my grandmother, just little things. So when I say that, that I'm missing out on that I know that would be healing to me if I had that just one little chance. And so I know it has to help the family members and the people, because they get to see the joy that someone
and they've
they
also
love.
made a memory that they can take with them.
It's something they get to keep too. We do the birthday parties with Auburn Crest Hospice, and I post pictures on Facebook, and I had gotten behind, who knows, it was like Halloween, and I hadn't posted any of the October pictures, and I said, I need to do that. And I posted a picture, and one of them, it was a man and his dad, and I make these cupcakes. I'm told what the person likes. I don't even always get to meet them. And the son in the picture reached out on Facebook and said, that's the last picture of my dad and I. We had such a great day. I didn't know who made the cupcakes. Thank you so much. Oh. And so that, yes, it meant something to him. He was there with his dad for his last birthday party, and he got to have pictures from it. And
do you think that in society, this society in particular, that it's nice, and nice is not a nice word to me, because nice is not a genuine word. It can have a lot of bullying and pressure added to it. So I prefer to use character words like, thoughtful or, other quality characters, but nice can actually have a bullying component, like don't do something because it's not nice. Right. And some people think it's not nice to talk about death.
I think our society as, Americans in the United States, and just because of my work with hospice, I found this to be true, we're not as open to it, even though we claim to be religious and spiritual as a nation. I mean, the vast majority of us do claim to believe in an afterlife or God of some sort, but we don't want to talk about it.
Or not only talk about it, just being anywhere around it.
Oh, and the elderly in general, people.
Totally. And when I came to this country and I went to Dallas, I went, well, where are the old people? Where are the old people? It's like if you go to the UK or
they just celebrate them, and we don't do the same thing.
You just have the full spectrum of all the demographics of the ages. And it was just my perception that in Dallas, I was just like, where did they go to? You hit 60 and you just disappear. It's like, so I think that's something that we do need to talk about, and but not only be fearful of it. And
no, it shouldn't be fearful of it.
Because when I was nursing, it was truly to this day, some of my, and it wasn't my favorite times, of course, but it was the most beautiful times was when I would sit with someone who, and when I was doing agency nursing, you'd go into these hospitals and no one other than what was in their notes knew their history. Mm-hmm. There was no one there. If they did have family, the family weren't around, but there was so alone. And so for me, I would talk with them and they appeared not to be there, but I was trained in my training, and I'm very, very grateful for this, is true or not, you speak as though that person is still cognizant. Mm-hmm. Whatever state you think they're in, you still treat them like they're cognizant. And I would talk to them and try to make their exit as welcoming as any entrance. Like, thank you for being here, call them sweetheart or whatever. But it was truly an honor to be with anyone in that situation. And I was very blessed to work for some matrons who were, one chap in particular on the North Shore was very particular about his charge sisters, which was what I was. That's what the nurses did. They enabled people, us, the RNs, to be with them. Mm-hmm. And it was always between 2 and 4, wasn't it? Right. But it was such a privilege. And I think that people really need to question their own perceptions, and we don't even want to ask ourselves about what those perceptions are. But truly, I think this is an important conversation for us to have. And if any of you have any questions, please post them, or any experiences you'd like to share. Because when we can visit next time, that would be, I think, of benefit to people. Oh, and definitely. Let's not wipe this under the rug. It can be beautiful. Just like a birth coming in, you try and make it beautiful going out. And that's, you're virtually, you are celebrating a life, mm-hmm. but you're celebrating everyone around them, and you're celebrating the time, and you're celebrating the moment, and you're creating that celebration where otherwise there wasn't. That is beautiful, and what a gift.
It really is. And that's, like I said to you, just the joy I get. Some of these people, I don't even know that, I haven't even met them before we're actually doing the experience. And then, the joy that I get,
And do you think this is a paradigm shift for people to sort of see that it's not this depressing? I mean, it's not necessarily, okay, it's not happy.
Right, but it's funny. So because of my upbringing, I shared with you, my mom is an RN, and I kind of grew up in a nursing home. I mean, I joke like that, but she was the director of nursing. So if she was staying at late work or work late, we would go see her, and I volunteered there. And so we grew up in a nursing home, my sister and I. I mean, we felt completely comfortable there.
So we were brought up to, like you, to just really treasure older people. Do you think that younger kids nowadays who don't have that access to older people may not understand to some depth how valuable life is, and also they think that life's going to go to hell in a handbasket at 18 or 24 or 30?
35's the old.
Sort of like, yeah.
So because of my upbringing, I've never been afraid of, elderly or disabled people. Really,
They're people.
they're just people. Nothing phases me. I feel my kids feel the same way. I know Hagen does. I think Naya, because of her being a teenager, but even my little girl, Sloan, will say her best friends are old ladies. And that's probably not the best term, but that is what she says. She said at Halloween because we went trick-or-treating at nursing homes. But I did a mentor group. I was part of a mentor group through Goodwill Industries with teenagers in high school. And so I was like, hey, let's go to an assisted living facility. A girlfriend of mine runs one. You want to go? One of the boys would not walk in the building. And I mean, he looked petrified. And I was like, what are you scared of? And he's like, old people. I'm like, well, you're going to get old. It's not a disease. It's not like you're going to come out of here with a cold and be old all of a sudden.
Isn't that sad?
It was so, I never did get him to go in. And I just wanted them to talk to the people and, hear their stories, because even before I started One More Time, that was one of my favorite things, like you were saying. It's just, hey, so I know that you were this, but what's your favorite book? And it's crazy what people and why and who influenced them to even read it. And when they really start telling you that story, the things that you think are important to them aren't always the same.
So this just reminds me of an interview done by John Anderson with Jordan Peterson when Jordan Peterson was in Australia. And he asked Jordan Peterson about the current trend, which actually is a political undercurrent, to disconnect the youth from their cultural history, which is through the older generations. And social media seems to have been the creator of the schism, but it's actually not social media. It's actually an education system that wants to separate kids from who they are and what they are, because then there's this more of this, because people need to belong.
Right.
They need to belong, and that's why you have kids that will tag and graffiti because they belong to gangs, is because that is a sign and symbol that people need in cultures, and that's why you have religious rituals and cultural rituals. And when you create that separation, humans will glob onto something else to replace it. And there is a concern, and a real and valid concern, because it's been used elsewhere, of this generation who are being led to being nice without being understanding or able to understand the consequences. So there's this concern that it's actually not helpful for a viable culture, and a viable culture is one that we've got new generations that come up and make changes for the good, but they also learn from the lessons of the past. So it is actually healthy for the individuals, but it's also healthy for a culture to have a connection with their elders. And unfortunately, through this conversation with death and dying, it also creates a vehicle for something beautiful for these younger people to have an identity of their family. The older people are not them, but it is part of their history, part of their culture, and they know, you can't know where you're going to if you don't know what's behind you. And so that is a huge problem. So I love the idea that you're creating these events that, even if it just sparks the first real meaningful interaction with the younger, with the older, if they will then go off and find the value in other people and their stories. And I think what you're doing is absolutely not only critical for these individuals and their families, but I think that what you're doing could also have a huge impact, as it should, on a society and culture that seems to be disconnected from its past. How do you think that you may use social media and the internet as you go forward in your one more time?
For the connection, just because, our youth is so internet, social media, I mean, that's where they get their information. They're not going to...
So are we oldies?
Probably. I read the newspaper every morning and I'm only 37, but that is an oddity.
I get mine. I've got my phone with me. It's like a spider. It's within 10 feet of me at all times.
And, there's no getting away from it. And so, but if we want to include the younger crowd, we have to go with what they are, comfortable with, like, whatever word you want to use. I actually said it recently about somebody and their child. I was like, you're trying to make your child do what you want to do, which is awesome if you like the same things, but sometimes you're going to have to do what they like to do. And so I think that all people like social media and see the benefits and whatnot to it, but if you really want to reach out and include the younger population, you have to use it because they're not going to use a phone book. There's a perfect example. I've never seen my daughter use a phone book. She probably would laugh and ask what it was. Yeah. Exactly, because it's on my phone. What do I need that big old book for?
I'm curious whether or not you could utilize the internet for these events as a digital memorial or a digital...
The hopes are too, and I think I did tell you that I've done one recording, but we haven't actually set it up, but to do like a podcast. So I did an interview legacy program, and so we would like to do that going forward because the stories that people have to tell, like I said, you'll go in, and it's probably anybody, but I've just been blessed to have these conversations with centurions and things like that, that you'll go in and you'll have this idea that they were in the Army for 60 years or 35, whatever it was that they retired, and then you find out that they skied in Patagonia, and it's like, who cares that you were in the military? Tell me about Patagonia. And they're just, you go in with this mindset of what was important, and it's
and
not always the same.
There's a whole lot of knowledge because just even from when I was little, there are skill sets that we used to just do every day, and we don't. And those skill sets may not be applicable now, but if you modify them into a different use, then we don't want to be having to reinvent the wheel, which throughout civilization we've had to do. So I think that your one more time is such a beautiful thing, because you think things are finishing, and actually they're just starting. Yeah. And it's just what have you gotten out of it?
I joke that I meet the coolest people because I haven't ever written a book or anything, so I never had a reason to reach out to a publishing company. And just meeting you and Anna, that was enjoyable. And we went to Yak, Montana, and we met one of the mountain men from History TV. I didn't even know what that was till this request came in, and I was like, I don't know. I know what a mountain man is, but the mountain, I have no idea.
They're cool. So
super
cool.
Super nice people. Tom and Nancy were some of the nicest people I've ever spoken to. And
talk about skill sets that we don't want lost.
Oh, they're just insane.
Yeah.
And that, I would have had no reason to be there, let alone meet them.
People are so fascinating.
They're so cool.
And that's what we're trying to do here with Tall Poppy, is that it's not only the people that have the story, the business has a story too. And we want to get people to know that the people behind the business first, before they can just sort of discover the story. And also, all of you are part of this story, the journey, as we visit with you all, as you move along, become like family.
Yes.
And so, on that note, I'm going to pass you this pearl of wisdom, and if you can look into it and say, this is what I'm going to do within the next 3 to 6 months. This is what I need.
In the next 3 to 6 months, I would love to do, we'll say 3 months, so that gives us 12 weeks, because my goal for 2019 was to help someone have an experience, whether it be a birthday party or the legacy program or just something unique to them. I wanted to do it at least once a week. So that was my goal.
That's huge.
And that's, so I would love to get referrals of people that are in need or interested in those kind of things.
Monetary support, resources of all sorts, might even be a boat to rent or a house to use or airline flights. People, resources, time, expertise, connections. Would you be looking at partnerships?
Oh, absolutely. Always looking for partnerships, because you just never know what somebody's going to need. And when you develop those relationships, it's funny. Like I said, some of my closest friends are new friends just because, you know, I asked for something and they asked for something, and then you just like each other after that. And it's funny, the introductions.
Sharing that experience.
You get so close so fast. And so absolutely, any partnerships. I had a woman reach out to me last week that's a massage therapist, and she wondered if that would be helpful for people on hospice. And I mean, I'm sure it would.
Yes.
I mean, physically, emotionally, it goes back to, like I said, with the bathing, and that you get so open with someone. And I think it's the same with a massage. That
Yes.
you'd be able to tell them something that you might not tell
Well,
your
a lot
children.
of people aren't. A lot of older people are not touched enough, and touch has this sort of weird sort of connotation here. But we'd give them hand massages because they don't get even hugs. Yeah. So there is that touch deprivation, especially in the older population. So, well, actually, with many people, especially who are disconnected and just live digitally now. But so, one event a week.
I would love to do it. Like I said, and it doesn't have to be a big event. Just somebody wants some cupcakes or wants to tell their story so that when they do pass away, their kids have something to listen to.
And how are you going to sustain this? It's almost a full-time job.
My hopes are to do it full-time in
Right.
2 years. And, you know, and that's another thing that's kind of funny when I say how supportive my bosses are, is they know that that is my goal too. So they know that I'm trying to work away from them, and at the same time, they're very
they seem
supportive.
very advanced people.
They're wonderful
Yeah.
people.
Yes.
But but in the meantime, I joke that I truly am a blessed person, because I will say, sure, I can do that, and I think I can do anything, and then if I can't, I always find somebody but I have always been lucky enough to find somebody to fill that gap, that if I physically, mentally can't do it, you do, or you know somebody. I don't know, it's once you open yourself up to the possibilities, there's no limit to what you
That's
can do.
right.
There really is.
We're expanding the pie. We're making the pie richer and broader and wider. It's not a pie of lack or limitations. You are also stretching out the pie for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the video. I know that you're excited and following these people. Hit like, hit subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in your journey too.